If you have not noticed, there's been trouble in the UK. This started yesterday afternoon, and I said, I'm definitely going to talk about this on the show tomorrow night. And for those of you who are not aware, I actually choose my news stories the night before. So I make my thumbnail, put the information in StreamYard, I do my SEO on YouTube, do all my tags, all of that jazz. And then today, it was announced that Boris Johnson agreed to resign. And I was like, shoot. I already created my thumbnail. So I'm going to discuss both of those with this story tonight. I do want to start with what happened yesterday, though, so you can understand how he got here, why he is agreeing to resign. So let's go ahead and get started with that story. So this came through yesterday. Boris Johnson, resignations exceed 50, but the prime minister stays in post. Again, that was as of yesterday. This is from the BBC, guys, if you're interested in the source here. And here we go. Let's go ahead and get into it. Boris Johnson remains as prime minister despite his two most recent cabinet appointments calling for him to resign. Again, this is what came out yesterday. Let's go down here. The wave of resignations from the government and party exceeded 50 on Thursday, as Northern Ireland Secretary Brandon Lewis became the first cabinet member of the day to quit, quickly followed by 7 other ministers. Previously, loyal supporters, including Priti Patel and Grant Shapps, urged him to step down on Wednesday. Meanwhile, Attorney General Suella Braverman has said she will stand in any leadership challenge, although she has not resigned. In his resignation letter on Thursday, Mr. Lewis said, I have given you and those around you the benefit of the doubt. I have gone out and defended this government both publicly and privately. We are, however, now past the point of no return. Treasury Minister Helen Whatley, Security Minister Damian Hinds, Science Minister George Freeman, Pensions Minister Guy Opperman, Technology Minister Chris Phillip, and Courts Minister James Cartledge also then resigned in swift succession. Let's go ahead down here. More than 40 ministers and aides quit on Wednesday, a record for a 24-hour period. Even late into the night, the resignations continued, with Welsh Secretary Mr. Hart standing down just before 11 p.m. So this is, I used to call this military time. So 2300, 11 p.m. Let's talk about this for a second. I'm going to get into the reasons as to why they resigned and why they wanted Boris Johnson to resign. Now, what I thought was interesting, this is a strategy. This is a strategy that the ministers use. Since Boris Johnson was not listening to them, obviously he's been spoken to multiple times, okay? He has scandals. I'm going to get into that in just a second. But since he decided to not listen to the ministers, they decided we are going to implement this strategy. One after one, we're going to resign. That's what they did. So it ended up being more than 40 of them that stepped down within 24-hour period to put pressure on Boris Johnson to resign. When I first read this, I thought to myself, imagine if that happened with our government. Imagine if the congressmen and women in DC who are fed up with Joe Biden came to some type of agreement amongst each other and said, look, here's the deal. I'm going to resign first. I'm going to step down, and then you guys are going to step down too. What if we had 50 congressmen and women step down, just walk out because they are disappointed with the job that Joe Biden is doing? That would actually be a way to put some type of pressure on Joe Biden. But I think we know our congressmen and women are not going to do that. They don't have the guts to do it. They really don't. But I'm highlighting this story because I do want us to start paying close attention to what is happening in Europe, how they're handling their politicians. And I want you to compare it to how we are handling our politicians. When we get into the farmer story tonight, same thing. How are they handling their labor issues and how are we handling our labor issues? It seems like to me, they don't seem to have as much fear. Over 40 ministers just walk out. I'm done. Aziz says that's assuming the Congress people are actually doing a good job and have integrity, Sabby. That's true. That is true. So let's go back in. There's one more part I want to cover here as well. So it goes on to say, later on Wednesday night, former loyalist Ms. Braverman joined the calls for Mr. Johnson to quit, telling ITV's Peston he had handled matters appallingly in recent days. She said she would not resign as it was her duty to carry on in her current job, but added, if there is a leadership contest, I will put my name into the ring. Former Health Secretary Matt Hancock also withdrew his backing for the prime minister, saying he had supported him through thick and thin, but now he needed to go. This is something that I would really like to see happen in reference to Joe Biden. So what happened today? The prime minister did, in fact, agree to resign. And I want to go ahead and get into that story here. And then I'm going to explain to you the scandals he was facing that really brought all of this on to begin with.
And joining us now, CNN chief international anchor, Christiane Amanpour. Such a dramatic wake up this morning, Christiane. How shocking is this?
Well, to be honest with you, not really, because in terms of the unfolding crisis, this has been unfolding and it was really just a matter of when and how, not if. It has come today, which some say gives him a slight shred of clinging on to a little bit of dignity to be able to actually resign, rather than what was actually going to happen on Monday when a key committee was going to vote to change its rules, to have another vote of confidence, which he was bound to lose as the number.
Oh, imagine that. They were actually willing to go as far. If he was not going to agree to resign, they were actually willing to go as far as to change the rules so that they can have another vote to push him out. Imagine that. Well, well, well. If only we could do that here.
Numbers show, and then he would have been kicked out. So this is a small shred of him being able to, at the behest of many of these resigning ministers, to actually resign. But just to put it into historical context, a historian today basically quoted this fact. In the last 300 years, of 55 British prime ministers, none has gone down in such spectacular flames as this one. And this is not about policy per se. It is about a matter of personal integrity, what they say is dishonesty, and the inability to govern. Nick Robertson a little earlier, some of the issues that he...
1 second, I just want to jump in when she talks about integrity and honesty. If only our politicians were held to the same standard. If only our politicians here were pointed out for their dishonesty, their lack of integrity, and their personal and private scandals. If only we had that same type of pressure on the politicians that we have here. What do we do in the United States instead? The other politicians try to make excuses for them. Now, one can point to someone like Andrew Cuomo. Yes, they tried to hold him accountable, but Andrew Cuomo's charges were dismissed. In the end, he knew that he was still going to win. So she's telling you here, and again, like, I've never been a fan of Boris Johnson, but she's letting you know right here that apparently in the UK, they tend to hold their politicians to a different standard, to the point where they actually mention honesty. Interesting.
He's had to deal with, the crises. He has stepped so far outside what's expected of mainstream politics, flung up so many scandals over the last 3 years that he's been in office, that is all just accumulated. It is a matter of personal integrity and the actual inability to govern, which is one of the former ministers, Rory Stewart, told me last night on my program. Listen to how he described it.
So she mentioned his inability to govern. And that's actually what we're dealing with Joe Biden right now. His inability to govern. Joe Biden hasn't made a plan in reference to where we're going to go with Roe v. Wade. He seems to be missing in action, by the way, too. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later tonight, where other congressmen and women are now speaking out about Joe Biden not being organized, not having a plan, not having a path forward. You know, technically not being able to govern.
Well, at some basic level, almost anybody in Parliament would be a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson. I mean, Larry the Downing Street cat at the moment would be a better Prime Minister, because the point is that he simply can't govern. The whole thing has become like a reality TV show, and this has been going on for months. It's impossible for him to have a long-term economic policy. It's impossible for him to announce any policies or be taken seriously, because...
Do we have a long-term economic policy right now? Does Joe Biden have a long-term economic plan? I don't think he does.
Every single week, there is another scandal, almost all of them of his own creation, almost all of them made worse, because he lies and tries to avoid before he finally comes through.
There they go again, talking about dishonesty. They have problems with him lying. Oh, if only we had that here.
Well, there you are. And that is from a former Tory party minister, not a member of the opposition. And that also clearly, lays out the big questions as to whether he can actually, as he wants to, take a quote unquote victory lap and be the caretaker prime minister. It looks like nobody's going to stand for that. We'll see what the rules say and what the party says. But remember, that Boris Johnson, as Prime Minister, has not only presided over all of this scandal, but a plunge in his own personal popularity, a plunge in the popularity of the party, a loss of 2 or more very crucial recent local elections, and that is what matters to the party. At one point, it was considered that Johnson was the necessary, quote-unquote, useful idiot, the poison chalice, because he could actually win elections. But even that...
I just want to jump in here and I just want to say it's interesting because when we look at Joe Biden's approval rating, which continues to decrease, politicians in our country aren't held accountable for that. It appears in the UK, Boris Johnson, his popularity was decreasing. They said it was not a good look for the party. So they're like, they really wanted him out. So it seems like in the UK, your approval rating actually has some weight. Rather, here in the United States, it doesn't. You see the difference? They are actually holding the politicians accountable. Politicians are not held accountable here, and the president is not held accountable here in the United States. Imagine if the approval rating actually had some significant weight of accountability to it. It's interesting.
Has proven to be less and less of a reality right now. So this is what's going on. And again, to put it into context, he has been in office for 2 years and 348 days. That is the same amount of time as Neville Chamberlain, who, as you remember, was kicked out over saying that peace in our time during World War II. And Boris Johnson, who compares himself to Churchill, has not actually stood up to this. And just another issue over foreign policy. The US government is not pleased with the Boris Johnson government. They have not rushed to give him a free trade deal as he wants because of his threat to the Northern Ireland peace process. Congress is not pleased with Boris Johnson and his perpetual threat to Northern Ireland and the Good Friday peace.
So that's part of it too. The United States government has issues with Boris Johnson as well. So there may have been some pressure from our end that pushed this as well. But that's important for you guys to know. I wanted to make sure you hear that part and this part right here as well.
Peace process. And in addition, the Ukraine policy, well, that's British policy. It's not Boris Johnson policy. It will continue. It is British, European, NATO, US policy to defend Ukraine. And that will not change.
How did I know that this has a little bit to do with Ukraine? Maybe just a little bit. So that's interesting. So he did agree to resign. He did give a speech earlier today, and I do want to play a little bit of that for you as well. So let's go ahead and there we go. Oh, I need to swap these. I'll come back to that one. Actually, let me run through the scandals really quick first, and then I'll play a little bit of his speech. So they mentioned that he had a couple of scandals. I just want to go ahead and mention these so you know where this is also coming from. All right. Partygate created the first dent in the Teflon coat, the most enduring and infamous controversy with which Johnson wrangled involved parties that occurred on government grounds during the most strict pandemic periods. So that's one of them. The second one, promoting Chris Pincher despite sexual misconduct allegations. Johnson promoted Member of Parliament Chris Pincher to the position of Deputy Chief Whip, one of the men responsible for lining up votes along party lines for conservative positions. So that was troublesome as well. By the way, this is not Chris Pincher. I don't know why they did it that way. This is actually Prince Philip. Just wanted to point that out to you because I don't want you to think that that's Chris Pincher. That's not him. The other scandal issue, he had a sex scandal during the time as foreign secretary. So it says here, Johnson has seen his share of sex scandals as well, including an incident in 2018 during which Lord Michael Ashcroft, who previously served as the deputy chairman of the Conservative Party, walked in on Johnson receiving fellatio. Sorry, it's YouTube. In his office. Johnson at the time served as Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs, and he was involved with a mistress by the name of Carrie Simmons, a woman he later married after divorcing his wife in 2020. So that was the second one there, third one, excuse me. The fourth scandal, the Owen Patterson affair. Pincher is not the only person Johnson had to defend in the face of immense criticism. In 2021, Johnson fought back against committee recommendations to suspend conservative lawmaker and foreign minister Owen Patterson for 30 days after he allegedly committed egregious case of paid advocacy. Patterson had lobbied on behalf of several companies that paid him, including at least 2 payments of £500,000. He regularly demanded access to ministers and regulators on behalf of those companies. And that was reported from The Guardian. And there's another one here. Johnson shuts down the government illegally. So this was another one. It says here that Johnson had supported Brexit from the start and went to great lengths to ensure its success, including an uncomfortable episode in which he faced accusations of misleading the Queen. Uh-oh, don't mess with the Queen. That's a big no-no. He asked Queen Elizabeth II to allow him to shut down the parliament for 5 weeks when the government still wrangled with the Brexit deal, unable to come to an agreement on what kind of deal to pursue as the clock wound down towards a deadline. Rather than face the issue, Johnson got the Queen's approval to shut down the government, a move that the British Supreme Court later determined to be illegal. So, Boris messed up. Boris really messed up. So he has now issued a statement here. Let's go ahead and share part of his speech. I'm not going to play the entire thing. And here we go.
Clearly now the will of the Parliamentary Conservative Party that there should be a new leader of that party and therefore a new Prime Minister. And I've agreed with Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of our backbench MPs, that the process of choosing that new leader should begin now. And the timetable will be announced next week. And I've today appointed a cabinet to serve, as I will, until a new leader is in place. So I want to say to the millions of people who voted for us in 2019, many of them voting Conservative for the first time, thank you for that incredible mandate, the biggest Conservative majority since 1987, the biggest share of the vote since 1979.
So he has said that they are going to determine the timeline for this, for his replacement, possibly next week. I don't know how long it is going to take for him to get a replacement. Their process in UK is different than the way that we do things here. So who knows how long this is going to take, but I'm hoping that they already had someone in mind when they were thinking about, getting him to resign. They probably do. I'm not sure, but yeah, this is embarrassing, right? Imagine if Joe Biden had to do this.
And the reason I have fought so hard in the last few days to continue to deliver that mandate in person was not just because I wanted to do so, but because I felt it was my job, my duty, my obligation to you to continue to do what we promised in 2019. And of course, I'm immensely proud of the achievements of this government, from getting Brexit done to settling our relations with the continent for over half a century, reclaiming the power for this country to make its own laws in Parliament, getting us all through the pandemic, delivering the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe, the fastest exit from lockdown, and in the last few months, leading the West in standing up to Putin's aggression in Ukraine. And let me say now to the people of Ukraine that I know that we in the UK will continue to back your fight for freedom for as long as it takes. And at the same time, in this country, we've been pushing forward a vast program of investment in infrastructure and skills and technology, the biggest in a century, because if I have one insight into human beings, it is that genius and talent and enthusiasm and imagination are evenly distributed throughout the population, but opportunity is not. And that's why we must keep levelling up, keep unleashing the potential of every part of the United Kingdom. And if we can do that in this country, we will be the most prosperous in Europe. And in the last few days, I've tried to persuade my colleagues that it would be eccentric to change governments when we're delivering so much, and when we have such a vast mandate, and when we're actually only a handful of points behind in the polls, even in mid-term after quite a few months of pretty relentless sledging, and when the economic scene is so difficult domestically and internationally. And I regret not to have been successful in those arguments, and of course it's painful not to be able to see.
I haven't heard him say anything about the scandals, though. Like, he's talking about his political accomplishments, but he didn't say anything about the scandals. And I was curious to see if he was going to apologize, for it. Maybe he does later on, but I don't want to play the whole thing because it's rather lengthy. But that's his speech there, letting you know that he has agreed to step down. If anyone in the chat is from UK, how do you feel about this? I think I may have seen one comment. Lewis, Sabby, I have to dissent here. The little scandals are less important to UK voters than 40-year high inflation of 9.1% in the UK. Yikes. Okay, that's interesting. That's good to know, Luis. Miziki says he's leaving like he's trying to save face because of scandals. Yeah. Oh man. Terry Hinton said he's deflecting. Yeah, that was the impression I got from this too. And Where Pilgrim says Boris is popular in Ukraine, about 90% like him there, about 24% like him in the UK. Yikes. I'm surprised he actually won. I'm surprised there. Extra Bullet says he probably won't actually leave until September because the Tories have to choose a new leader. Yeah, I was wondering about that too, but he said they're supposed to decide the timeline next week. So we'll see. I'll keep following this story. Nick says the Brits would never stand for Biden as a prime minister. You see, guys, see the difference? And thank you for the super chat as well, Andrew. The only Dems who would step down because they are upset with Biden are blue dogs. Then they will write books about how far left the party is now. Interesting. Thank you for those. You know, this is kind of embarrassing, I would think, because he has not finished his term. They're like, look, you got to go. The fact that there were over 40 ministers that quit within a 24-hour period, they've never had that many quit in such a short length of time. Angela said, I don't live in the UK, but I still have family there. They are too worried about inflation and shortages. Thank you, Angela. Thank you so much.